I'm answering all your interior design questions today from Chez Sonia. It's a gorgeous restaurant, great food. It's also a gallery space, so lots coming up. Keep watching. Hi, I'm Ash Appleton. Welcome back to An African Eye. I'm in the cartoon room here at Chez Sonia. It's a great place to hang out, and everything you see in this room is actually available for sale. So what's not to like? So, first question. Nicole asked me on YouTube about, she says, my problem is I have a very large space and massive white walls. Where do I start with the art or the furniture? I mean, lucky you. That's a great problem to have. I think it's not a question of starting with one or the other. I think it's a question of asking yourself, how do you want the room to feel? What does the room need to do? And then from then on, you can choose the furniture and the art that goes with your intention. So it's about being intentional. You have to start with knowing what you want the room to do and the kind of mood you want to create. When you know all these things, everything you bring in is going to reflect that. If you have a piece of art already that you want to put in, great. You can actually do a room scheme around a beautiful piece of art. You can design a room scheme around one gorgeous painting. It's about what you already have. Maybe you've got a beautiful sofa that you want to use. So that's what you're going to start with. Your starting point is what you already have. This question actually has two dimensions to it, because you've got a very large space and massive white walls. That's another issue that's quite separate from whether you start with art or furniture. If you want, you've got to ask yourself in terms of if you've got a big space, do you want it to feel big or do you want to make it smaller? You can make it feel a bit cozier by painting. Perhaps you can paint the ceiling a different color. Remember, the ceiling is your fifth wall. You can paint that ceiling a different color and then bring the same color that you painted on the ceiling, like the top quarter of the wall. So can you imagine that you've got blue on the ceiling and then the top quarter of the wall is blue? So that way it's going to make the room feel a little bit, it brings the room down, it makes it feel a little bit smaller. So that's one way of making the space feel a little bit more accessible and doesn't feel like a squash court. Wazozuri asked me about, how do you keep your roses fresh? Do they last longer than a week? I mean, I love flowers. I always make sure that I have flowers in my apartment. Really nice, really, great way to brighten up a space without doing a lot. And it depends on the season. During the dry season, obviously, they don't last, sometimes they'll last days and not even weeks. But during the colder season, they're going to last longer. What I usually do is I put a bit of bleach in the water, and then I put a bit of sugar, and then I cut the stems on a diagonal, and then put them in. And that way you can push them to about a week. So hope that's helpful. Kadiza254 on Instagram says, how can I book a session to jazz up my apartment? And Nera Masinda on YouTube says, do you do private consultations on interior decor? Well guys, guess what I do? I've just launched my virtual interior consultancy services. I've got 3 packages. So there's something for everyone. They're accessible, and it's a really good way to get the results you want in the shortest time possible. You can either book a 30-minute video call, show me your space, or ask me a question. It's like a doctor's appointment. That's a really good one. Or you can actually send me 3 phone photos of your space, of your room, and I'll give you feedback on what's not working and how to improve it. At least 3 or 4 ways on how to improve it. Things that you can action immediately. And my premium package is called my Ravishing Room Reno. This is a really comprehensive, full-on service where you book a session and then I send you materials to find out more about you, about how you want the space to work, about what you like, about your interior style preferences. We build on this during a 1-hour Zoom consultation. After the consultation, I'll send you a transformation guide, things that you can do to implement what we've discussed. And then when you start doing that, I will hold your hand afterwards and give you feedback on the finished result. So there's something for everyone. Check it out. DM me or email me, and can't wait to work with you. Next up, how to create an illusion of more space. This is such a good question from Chungchu on Instagram. The first thing I would say is make sure that the only things that are in the space are the things that you really need. Minimize clutter. solve all your problems almost immediately. And then make sure that your furniture actually fits the room. A lot of people make the mistake of having pieces that are too big for the room, so the room starts looking really crowded and congested. So think about what you have in your room in terms of furniture. You may not need all the chairs you have, tables. Try and see what you can take out. Peony Magic has asked a pretty general question about storage options. And a lot of people ask me this question. Sometimes they're renting and there's not enough cupboard space or wardrobe space, so they're asking me how they can get around this. So the first thing I'd say is assess what you have. Do you need everything that you have? You may need to, if you can declutter, that actually may solve your storage problems. Because sometimes we're keeping stuff that we don't actually need and we never miss. So if you can get rid of stuff, you can sell them, you can thrift them, whatever, that could be a solution to your storage problems. The next thing you could do is built-in storage. I love built-in storage. When I was renting, I had built-in storage. And when I moved, I repurposed it. So I use MDF. It's a great option. It's easy to work with. It's cheaper. It's more sustainable. And you can get it up and running quite quickly. So think about MDF storage. Really good option. Okay, next question from Johnson _13. Where do you find fabulous budget-friendly carpenters and then art and home decor in Nairobi? That's a difficult question to answer because everyone's idea of budget-friendly differs. It's hard to give an answer that's going to make everyone happy. In my experience, you often pay for what you get what you pay for. So you're trying to save money. In the long run, you don't get a really good result. So that's something to think about. I've got a great carpenter. I can give you his contact, but he may not be accessible in terms of budget for everyone. So, it's just, I think the best thing to do is start small. Test someone, ask them to make you something really simple, like a tiny little shelf or a simple stool, and then see if you're happy with that result. If you're happy with that result, then you go on from there. Don't go into the big project. So you always test and then get recommendations for other people as well. Be careful with roadside carpenters because sometimes they use wood that's not quite dry, so it starts splitting, or it's not, and very heavily stained pieces as well. So, it's everything looks the same, if you get what I mean. But it's a great conversation, and I think it's one that I'd like to, maybe do an entire episode around. It's really important. In terms of home decor items, markets are your best friend. Markets, there's so many accessible, affordable pieces in the local markets. So there's no excuse for saying you can't afford home decor items, especially if you're living in Kenya. Another great question from Johnson _13. What to do with corners that don't get a lot of natural light? How do you brighten up these areas? So you can do two things. You can either work with what you have and not fight it. In other words, embrace the fact that it's not a lot of light and just go with moody, deep, colors, rich colors, make it cozy and sort of like a cocoon sort of thing, or a cave. That could work. Just, stop trying to make it lighter if you can't make it light. Just embrace the fact that it's going to be dark and use furnishings and fittings and colors that embrace that fact. Or you could try and lighten it up by painting that area in a light color. White always works. Maybe you can paint the ceiling board as well in brilliant white but gloss finish to reflect, to bounce light back into that space. The cheapest, most effective option, I think, is to put a really big mirror in that corner. That mirror will reflect some light, bounce some light back into the area, and also make the space much bigger. So mirrors, decorative mirrors, are a really good way of brightening up dark spaces. Another question from BN is about tips on various ways you can display your art. Well, please check out my YouTube video on creating a gallery wall. There are lots of options I discuss in terms of gallery walls. This is a really good way to bring a bit of personality into your space and to show off your art. Also, my other video on how to fill a blank wall. There's lots of information in both of these about, what you do in terms of framing art and bringing it into your home. I got a question about what is your take on dominant walls? What makes them dominant? Why do they exist? How can you tell if it's a dominant wall. That's a kind of I'm not quite sure what that question is asking, but in case, does it mean, is it a feature or an accent wall? If you're talking about feature or accent walls, these are the walls you decide yourself that you want to highlight. A wall could be dominant if it maybe has a fireplace, so that's a natural focal point. Your eye is immediately drawn there, or it has another architectural feature that's quite visible in the room, so that becomes a dominant feature in the room. So you can decide whether you want to play that up or play that down. So it would help to see sort of a picture, because I'm not quite sure what the question is asking, and I hope I'm answering it. Okay, now this is an interesting question. Where would you advise one to put their speakers in a living room? It's interesting and difficult to answer because it depends on what the speakers are in the room, in the living room. Are they part of the TV sound surround system? Are they part of the music setup? How big is the living room? It's difficult to answer without seeing and knowing. And also, are they beautiful? Are they really nicely styled? If they are, then you want to show them off, right? If they're not, if they're quite ugly and clumpy, you kind of want to minimize them by maybe encasing them in a nice cabinet, custom-made cabinet or something like that. So, but of course you don't want to block the sound. You don't want to block the sound. So these are all, it really depends on their function, and what they look like. And don't forget to visit places like Chez, Sonia. I mean, in terms of inspiration, there's just so much here. Ideas that you can take with you and try and implement at home. It's not about copying, as we've said before. It's about being inspired. And the more time you spend in these kind of places, the more things come to you, more ideas, the more your personality will come out. You ask yourself what you like, what moves you, and how you can interpret that into your space. And please check out my website, www.anafricaneye.com. You'll find all the information you need about my interior design packages. And then you can also see how I work, my projects, my love for color, what inspires me. It's all there, so don't forget to check it out. So that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for the questions, really appreciate them. And keep them coming, just keep them coming, and I'll do another episode, answering your questions. Hope this one was helpful. Have you got any more questions? Drop them in the comments. Share resources. If you know great craftsmen, please do share resources. It helps everyone, if they're willing to have their contacts shared. And, comment, subscribe, ping the notification bell so you don't miss out on future episodes. Can't wait to hear from you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.